So let's go to main CSS over here and scroll all the way to the bottom, right? And maybe let's make this one a little bit smaller over here because we're still going to be able to work, right? And over here, as always, we're just going to create a lot of space over here, and we're going to say that this is going to be a goals section, right? So we're going to see goals section over here, and let's right away copy this, and we're just going to say this is going to be end of goals section, right? Now after that, we're going to start placing all our rules over here in between these two comments, right? So again, the first thing what we want to do is probably select the whole section over here like this, and let's say that we're going to create some padding, right? So I'm going to say that this is going to have a padding. Let's say it's something like 20 pixels over here and 10 pixels to the sides, right? So it's going to be top bottom, right? 20 pixels, and over here we're going to create some 10 pixels on the side. Now I want to use over here this navy blue color, right? Because we haven't used it so far. So I'm just going to set the background with this navy blue color, right? So if we go back, and I'm just going to say over here, and we'll see how it looks like. It's going to be background color, and we're going to paste it over here, right? Now here it is where I was talking about how, first of all, we're going to probably need to change the color right away, right? So over here, we're going to say that this is this color, right? Color for the text should be a little bit different, right? So we're going to say color is going to be something like, I don't know, white smoke in this case, right? So we can see it a little bit better, right? But we also right away, we need to include this over here. You can see it, right? This background for this font awesome header needs to be the same color. So that way it actually looks much more better, right? So over here, if we go back over here, and we find where it is our font awesome, right? Should be somewhere all the way to the top, right? Where was our rule? Font awesome underline after and the background, right? So in this case, I'm just going to copy this one, just this part over here, and we're going to scroll all the way down, right? And we're going to say that when we have a goals section, right? And then we're going to paste this rule, right? And then we're going to say that then, right? The background color should be a little bit different, right? And we're going to say that the background color over here needs to be this one, right? So I'm just going to select this, copy this, and paste it over here. And now you can see that once the background color is exactly the same as our previous sections, it actually looks much more better, right? And you can see that we just have this line, and it looks like it's supposed to be, right? So that's the only downside of using, obviously, this font awesome, that you are going to have to change in some shape or form how it actually looks like, right? And the way I'm looking at this text over here, I can see that I actually forgot one thing. And if we go back to index.html, over here, I would want, it's going to be a little bit annoying, but I would want over here this text, right? This H3. I also would want a class, right? And I would want a text muted, right? Just so it looks a little bit better, right? So what I'm going to do over here, I'm just going to go over my H3s, right? And I'm just going to add this class text muted. So I'm just going to copy this one over here, and we're going to paste it, right? Just so it looks a little bit better. Here we have to paste it properly, right? And then we're going to go to our next H3, right? And we're going to paste it. Same as with this one. Over here like this. And now you can see we have two more missing, right? So we go over here, and we just go over here. And now that we have our mistake, that I created mistake, now that I fixed it, right, we can go to main CSS and we can actually work, keep on working on our style, right? So the next thing that we would want to do is actually deal with our font awesome, right? So if we go over here and we say that this is going to be a goals, right? I'm just going to say that we want to select font awesome of the goals, right? So first of all, we would want it float, right? And we would want it float to the left, right? So something like this. Then we're going to say that font size is going to be something like 60, right? So we're going to say 60 pixels, right? So now you can see how big it all of a sudden got, right? Here again, we're going to use a color, and we're going to say that the color is going to be 15025, which you should be already familiar with this color, right? This is the color that we keep repeating. And what we're going to do over here, we're just going to add a border, but border to the right, right? So we're going to write border, right? Over here like this. And we're going to say this is going to be a 3 pixels solid over here, and F15025. Right, and over here, if we click it away, you can see that we have created our border. Right, now what I also want to do is add a little bit of padding to the right. Right, so I'm going to say padding right over here like this, and let's say something like 10 pixels. Right, so now we technically moved that border a little bit away. Right, now that we're done with a font awesome, we can probably start working with a over here with this goals title, right? Remember when we had this goals title over here like this, right? This was our goals title. So I want to actually work with this element, right? So if we go back and over here, I just write a goals title. So I'm going to say goals, right? And I'm going to say that this is going to be a goals title. So maybe we can just add as a class over here like this, right? And I'm going to say that I would want all the elements in a goals title. That's why I'm using the star, right? Over here, the star. And I'm going to say that I would want their margins to be 0, right? So I'm just going to say a margin top, more specifically, right? I'm going to say margin top, and this is going to be 0, right? And the reason for that, because I want them to be right away side by side like this, right? This is the look that I wanted, right? Now, after that, what I would want to do is actually probably push it a little bit away from that border over here, right? So what I'm going to write over here is that I would want a for the promises title, right? For the goals title, sorry, right? I would want a margin, right? So here I'm just going to write that this is going to be goals title over here. And I'm going to say the margin to the left should be something like 80 pixels, right? So we're going to go 80 pixels, right? Now you can see how we successfully moved it away from this, from away from our font awesome icon, right? So again, it already looks a little bit differently, right? And next thing what I would want to do is actually select a goals over here, this paragraph, and just again add some changes to it, right? So here I'm going to say goals over here, and I'm going to say that this is going to be a paragraph, right? Here this paragraph in the goals, and I would want to add a padding 10 pixels over here like this, and we're going to add a line height. We're going to say the line height is going to be some 1.5 em, so right, something like this, right? And after that, maybe one other thing that we can do is maybe let's make a font size bigger, right? So we're going to say a font size over here, and we're going to say this is going to be like 20 pixels, right? So now I can see that they're bigger. Maybe 20 is a little bit too much. 16 is fine, right? So again, already right away it looks a little bit better, right? Now we're not done, right? Because what we want to do is we want to create a little bit, let's say a little bit more, let's say different look, right? As we're scrolling over these items, right? So if we go back to main CSS, right? We were gonna add some for the columns, a little bit different background as we're hovering over them, right? So let's go back over here and let's start styling these columns, right? So here we're gonna say that this is gonna be goals, right? And we're gonna say that this is gonna be a goals column smart, column small, right? So we're gonna write goals call over here small, and we're gonna say it's 6, right? So now we're selecting those columns, right? And we're just gonna say that first of all we want to add a padding. This is gonna be something like 20 pixels, right? And then we would just want to add a little bit of margin to the top, right? So we're gonna say margin 10 pixels like this, but 0 pixels to the side, right? So we would want the same margin. We just don't want the margin to, we just want the margin more to the top, right? The sides we're fine with these margins, preset margins, right? And after that, we're going to say that once we're hovering, we'd want a different color, right? So over here, I'm going to say that goals, right? Over here like this. And we're going to say column, small, or here 6. And once we hover, we would want a different color, right? And what we would want is background, right? And background color, we were going to go with this one over here, this black one, over here like this one, right? So this section is going to be pretty dark, right? But just for a change, we can do that, right? So we're going to paste it over here. So you can see as I'm hovering over here, it actually changes the color to this black one. And after that, we're going to say that we would want a border radius, let's say, to be something like 10 pixels, right? I'm going to say border radius, right? We're going to say like, let's say like 15 pixels, right? So it's more rounded corners. And then we're going to say the color while we're actually hovering, right? Should be also like something like white smoke, right? Let's check it out. But actually we have the same color already. So maybe that's not what we want. Maybe we should change it to this gray one, right? So once we're covering, right? Let's go to our previous section, pricing section, right? And pricing section had this gray color over here. And this we want our fonts, right? So I'm going to copy this and we're going to paste it, right? And over here, you can see that once we're going to be hovering, right? Our text is actually going to be changing gray. Now it's maybe not really noticeable, but it is already, it is a little bit, at least to me, right? And the last thing that I want to show you is, right, how we can make look with CSS these folded corners, right? So let's go back to our CSS, and again we're going to do a little bit of well, I wouldn't call it really a trick, but we're just going to add something using CSS that we actually didn't have it in a HTML, right? So again, we're just going to create a little bit more space. And if we go over here, and if we write, let's say that, again, we're goals, right? And then we can say column, small, 6, right? But again, we use a pseudo class before, over here like this. And let's go to our live preview so you can see what's happening, right? And over here, what we're going to say is that we would want a content, first of all, right? This should be a content over here like this. And we're going to say that content is going to be empty like this. And then we're going to say that this is going to be a display block, right? We're going to say display block. Then we're going to say a position, right, over here like this, position absolute, and then we're going to say that this is going to be located top 0, and then we're going to have a right over here like this, right, it's also going to be 0, and over here the width is going to be, let's say, 40 pixels, and the height is also going to be 40 pixels, right? So something like this, right? And you cannot see anything right now, but once we're going to start adding a colors, you're actually going to be able to see, right? So over here, if we go back and if we just say like here, goals, right? Goals. And you can see I misspelled it. And over here, it's going to be column, small, again, 6, and before. And we're just going to separately write a border colors, right? And what we're going to say is that this is going to be a border top, right? Border top over here, and we're going to say this is going to be solid and 20 pixels, right? And you can see that something starts happening right away. And pretty much the basic idea behind this is the same like how we were working over here, right? Remember when we were dealing with this section, right? When we were actually using the border to get this line, right? So we'll actually be doing the same thing, right? And what we did over here, right? We created over here, there's a little box, right? So this is going to be the box, right? Imagine, right? This is going to be the 40 pixels. Width is 40 pixels and height is 40 pixels, right? Now what we're doing, again, we're just setting the borders, and because we're using a solid border, right? we're actually able to manipulate it and make it like in a triangles. And you'll see what I'm talking about just in a second, right? So here, if we use a solid 20 pixels, right, for the border top, right, if we go back and if we use this, let's say this blue color, right, that we had over here, this blue one for our whole document, right, for our whole goals section over here, if we use copy, right, and I paste it over here, now it disappears, right? So we cannot see, right? So border top and border right are going to be exactly the same, right? So here I'm just going to copy this, and over here I'm just going to say right, and it's going to be also going to be the same. However, if we go border left over here, and we're going to say the same thing, that this is going to be a solid, right? But we're going to use a different one, right? So we're going to say border left, and here we're going to write a solid, but we're going to use a different color, right? So here we're going to say F15025, or here like this. So here you can see that something is happening right away, right? And then the same thing is we're going to do with a bottom, right? So border bottom, and now we can have a folded corner, right? And again, remember when we were working with the borders, right? The same thing, right? So obviously, if we would change these ones around, right? If, let's say, this one wouldn't be orange color, right? For the border left or border bottom, right? But border top and border right, right? So over here, this triangle would be the opposite direction, right? So obviously right now we have this corner in this direction just because we used over here these colors, right? And the most important thing is we need to remember that if we want this color, right, over here, this color should be exactly the same as our background, as always, right? Because then we cannot see this, right? If we're going to be using any other color, let's say over here, if I'm going to write white, right, something like this, you can see that this triangle, right? And this is the point I'm trying to make, that once we're working over here with these borders, right, imagine that you're creating over here this 20 pixel border, right? But because you're using this solid, right, over here, right, therefore it's actually hidden, right? So again, if we go over here, now let's say I'm gonna write red, right? So this is gonna be a red triangle, right? And over here, I'm just gonna say that this is gonna be something like, I don't know, navy, no, not navy, right? So you can see that we created basically a little triangles. And the way we do that is that we are selecting the border top and border side. But because we are using solid, it actually needs to overlap. And that's how we create these little triangles, right? So I'm just going to go back to what we had. We had F15025 over here. And then over here we had this, maybe we can use transparent. Let's see how it looks with the transparent. And let's check it out, this one, transparent too. Transparent, right? So we can also use transparent if we want, right? The problem with transparent though is you can see that when we're going to be hovering over, you can see that maybe it's, well, maybe you like this look better. I don't know really. I mean, it depends. I mean, it's not really bad, right? I mean, the only thing is once we're hovering, we can see over here this little corner, right? So if you don't want this corner, you can obviously change that color, right? So maybe let's do that. And for some of you who like that corner to be shown, you know how to do it with the transparent, right? So we're just going to delete this, and we're going to delete this over here also, right? And since now it's using a default white one, right? And if we go back all the way on the top where it is, our underline, we just copy this, right? And we're going to add it over here, right? So now we have our borders set and everything is working, right? So now that we're done with this one, we're going to create another section, right? Remember how we created over here this work section, right? So we're going to, again, use a little bit different CSS properties to do that, right? So now you saw a different technically services section. We just named it our goals section, right? But in next video, we're going to check it out how we can make a different work section or portfolio section. Basically what it's going to be, it's going to be images that are displayed as our work.